Hey guys, so I wanted to bring a inlay first impressions. Originally, I had a request from a client in the summer to make an inlay ring for their father, and I wanted to fulfill the request, but I also had never done an inlay. So I went onto YouTube and I kind of searched around. I watched a few tutorials, but at the time I didn't have my cab machine, so and I don't have a lathe. I have a polishing unit and I have a lot of tools. So I ended up following, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Geomao Creations tutorial. And I basically wanted to make a video of me following his tutorial and how I ended up coming out with my like how my ring came out. Obviously, I took a few different steps. I used the same Starbond products that he used, and I bought, obviously I didn't buy the turquoise that he recommended, but I used a lot of the same stuff. But I wanted to show you guys some of what I incorporated, like different tips that I used. So yeah, this again is not really more or less of tutorials. I don't really plan on doing a lot of tutorials on this channel, but I had an idea of maybe doing things like following like a Lucy Walker, project or whatever it is online, or like, the lapidary artists, they'll have little projects, and just seeing how easy it is to bring to life some of these projects that other people put out on the internet, so that this way you can learn new skills. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy. Leave me a comment below if you like this type of video. Sorry for the mess, but this is where I work, and I also have my workout stuff over here, so it's just kind of crazy. But Happy New Year. I'm hoping 2021 can be a little bit kinder to all of us. So yeah, let's get into it. So here are some of the supplies that I'm going to be using. I'm doing a voiceover because I wanted to speed things up a little bit. So I have the crushed turquoise. I also have the Starbond in clear in medium. And then I also have the accelerator, which allows it to dry instantly. I have some recycled sterling for the base of the ring, along with some abrasives that I'm going to be using to smooth out and grind down the turquoise so it's flat and looks like an inlay ring. I also bought this Dedeco kit in case I wanted to use this instead of the sanding wheels. This is really more of a trial and error, so yeah, let's get to it. For this ring project, I needed to make a size 7, so I'm going to be doing about an 8.5mm wide band, so I will mark that as you see. And this is about a 19 gauge ring shank, so I think it was about like 56 or 58 millimeters long. I mark that, and then I'm going to cut it out to get the final piece of metal that will be the base of the ring. So I'm going to show you two different ways, and there are other ways that you can create a flush seam for your solder joints, but one is a really good tool, which is this miter jig vise. It's going to really allow you to take the guesswork out of creating a really nice flush seam. You just use the tool, you put the metal in, and then you're able to just run the file flat across, and it does really most of the hard work for you. Or if you don't have this tool, you can certainly use a vise like this, or you can use your bench pin as well. I just wanted to show you both ways that you can do it to create a really nice flush flat seam for soldering. And it really counts when you have these wider bands, because you don't want to have a weak spot or any kind of gaps. You don't want to rely on the solder to try to fill it in. I just wanted to show these two different ways that I normally do it. Of course, you can do it the way that you like as well. So now I'm going to apply some hard solder to the wide band, and I'm just going to heat this until the solder flows, and then we can move on to the next step by shaping and creating the other two bands to create that channel for the inlay. So I'm going to take this ring, and I measured the diameter. Again, I made this ring back in the summer, so I'm just trying to remember all the steps I took, but I timed that by pi, and I cut out 2 pieces of the square wire, so this way I can create that channel. And I'm pretty sure when I made these, I did have to bump them up a little bit because of the thickness, so I just tapped them with my hammer to get them to the size so that they would fit snugly around, as you can see, the ring shank to create that channel. And then I was ready at this point to solder them all together so I can move on with the next step of the inlay. So I'm going to now solder all of the components together, and I'm a huge fan of doing the all hard soldering technique as much as I can. I still use medium and easy in a lot of projects, but I like to use hard as much as I can. This way it really gives me a lot of freedom if I have a intense multi-solder project. And you start to really adapt as you do the technique and learn to watch when the solder flows so you can keep using hard throughout the project. I read a book on it, or an ebook, like many years ago. But as you can see, we have this all soldered and on to the next step. After pickling, you're going to flip it over and you're going to repeat that process on the other side until the solder flows. And this is the last step of soldering for this particular project. The rest of it is just doing the inlay work. Now I'm just taking my flat bastard file. I'm just going around the ring shank and just making sure it's even and getting it prepped for the next step of inlay. You can also use your ring mandrel against your bench pin if you want to do the ring cleanup as well. This is going to be the same kind of principle of how you're going to clean up the inlay once you apply the stone into that channel. You're going to want to purchase whatever material for the inlay part of the project. You can do turquoise, you can do opal. There's a lot of different, you can do abalone shell. But today I'm going to be working with turquoise. I ended up buying nuggets, but usually you could find this on Etsy, and I'll link down below. Maybe just like a turquoise inlay search. They come in different powders, so it could be fine, medium, and coarse. That's just basically how big like the nuggets are that you're going to be using to fill in the channel for the inlay. You really want something, I would say, between medium and fine, probably more medium, just because you don't want it to be too small where it's just turquoise powder, and you don't want it to be too big where you don't have enough chunks to really or variety in color that you're going to be able to fill in the actual channel. Remember, it's not that big. It is a ring. So yeah, you could see there's all different powder sizes that I'm making myself. I found this to be a little more cost effective for me. Plus, a little goes a long way for these projects. So this is about a medium one that I'm hammering out right now, and that's probably my favorite size. And again, I just kind of mix it with the fine as well, just to get a really nice variety. All right, so I'm going to do things a little bit differently than the tutorial that I saw, just to kind of accommodate my setup and just kind of what I want to achieve. So I have right here my crushed turquoise in the fine and sand. Then I have more of the chunks, and then I have some sterling silver filings. And I actually filed these from some scrap pieces. I didn't want to have anything that was just laying around on my bench that had any dirt or debris that would get into the ring. I set up a manila envelope here. Folder. So this way it can catch all of the turquoise that falls, and then I can, reuse it and put it back in the bag. And I have my medium CA glue that I'm going to be using from Starbond. And I have my tweezers that I'm also going to be using, and I'll just be picking up individual pieces and popping them in. This is a spare ring mandrel. He did suggest to do that because with the glue and I guess maybe the accelerator, it might ruin the mandrel, but luckily I do have an extra spare one. So I'm going to get started on placing all of the turquoise pieces. I might pop the larger chunks out onto a tray. I'm not really sure right this second, but as you'll see as we go along. So now we are going to put the turquoise in the channel, and you're basically going to repeat this process all the way around. You're going to apply some of the CA glue. You're going to put it in there. You're going to pop the turquoise and take your time. You kind of have to move a little quickly because it is still a super glue essentially, but try to take as much time as you have to pick the pieces that you want, especially if you're going to work with the turquoise because they're all different colors. And you're just going to repeat this process. And when you want to dry it, you're going to use the accelerator spray, and this is going to cure it instantly. So it makes it really easy to move the ring around without everything falling off or slipping because the glue isn't dry. This is going to dry it immediately, and this stuff is really, really, really tough. So yeah, again, just repeat the process, and you can use opals, you can use the turquoise. I believe you could use malachite to do this as well. So now we're pretty much done. I'm just adding any last minute touches with the CA glue, adding a couple more stones in there, and then using that accelerator spray to just cure it. And you'll notice that once you're done and you start to move on to the next step, you might have to go back and fill in some areas, and that's okay. You just repeat the process if you have any missing gaps or anything like that. So now we want to remove that excess turquoise and glue so we can have it flush with the metal, and it can be nice and flat. You can do this one of two ways. If you don't have a lathe and you don't have a cabbing machine, you can just use a hand file. You want to use something that has a little bit of grit and it's coarse, but I would also recommend using an older file. Or if you have a polishing cabinet, the way that I would prefer to do this, and I'll show you in the next step, is to use a Cratex wheel. So here is the Cratex wheel that I'm using, and I believe this is about a medium. I'll link it below. It's from Rio Grande, and this is obviously much quicker than using the file method, but you can do either or. So if you have a polishing cabinet, this is a great way to do it if you're going to do a lot of inlay. If not, the hand file method I think works just fine as well. It's just going to take you a little bit longer to do. So as you can see, we're pretty much flush. I'm going to do the rest with files and some sandpaper. I just wanted to show you guys how you could quickly remove it with that wheel. So now I'm just going back with the file and I'm just finishing up and making sure it's completely flush. I didn't want to use the Cratex wheel all the way down to the middle. I wanted to make sure I have a little more control with the hand file so I'm not shaving away at all of that metal that I worked hard with building the actual ring shank with. So as you can see, I'm just checking it to make sure everything is flush, and now we can move on to the final steps. So here we're gonna do the sanding part of the process. This is pretty much the final step before polishing. And I chose to use sanding drums. I believe in the original tutorial he used 3M discs and maybe he had some rubber wheels in there too. But I really like these. I've had them for a while. I use them for the inside of ring shanks and they go all the way from 180 grit to 7,000. So you really get like a very nice high shine with it. And yeah, just pretty much repeated the process until I reached the 7,000 grit and then got ready to do the final polishing with some polishing compounds. So the last and final step is polishing the ring. You can use whatever compounds you prefer. I always like to use gray followed by rouge or zam or sometimes both. Just make sure you clean the piece in between each compound so this way you don't contaminate your wheels. And overall, I thought this was a really fun project, and for this being my first one, I felt confident to sell this to a client. It turned out really nice, and all of the information will be linked below. If you guys decide to make this, let me know in the comments how it went, if it was easy, if you liked the end result, and yeah, thanks for watching.